reason why they're there. I'm not saying it's because they're guilty, it's because there's been some type of corruption, injustice, just false identification, just people being
or no identification. I mean, looking
well, yeah,
at
exactly.
this is ridiculous. Hello, and welcome to No Stone Left Unturned. I am your host, Matt Muller. This is a true crime podcast focused on finding the truth. Good or bad, we investigate each case to the fullest extent. Each season, I will take you through a case of someone who has proclaimed innocence. They provide the case, the court documents, and their side of the story. We find the truth. 63% of wrongful convictions involve misidentification. My mission is to create a community of true crime podcasters who can work together to find justice. Please join our Facebook group, No Stone Unturned Pod, for case documents, follow-up questions about the case.
Can you say please send the police and an ambulance to Carlos O'Kelly's at 3420?
Ma'am, calm down. What's the problem?
Husband, please hurry.
What is the problem?
Shot.
Okay, let me put you through the ambulance. Stay on the line. Is the person that did it still there?
Yes.
Okay, who shot him?
I don't know. I just came back. We were doing a tour, and I came back, and my husband said he'd been shot.
Okay, is he conscious?
Yes, he is. He's laying on the floor.
Okay, just calm down. The ambulance will be there in just...
What's the address of the emergency, ma'am?
3425 South Kansas Avenue. It's Carlos O'Kelly's Mexican Cafe.
And the person that shot him is still there?
No, the person that shot him is long gone.
Okay, can you... Okay, hey, Amar, go ahead. I'll get my questions.
Today, we will analyze the state's witness against James Griffin. This is the original 911 call, a frantic call for help. The suspect, a man in a hoodie with a ski mask, fleeing on foot across a parking lot. The state's first witness was Robert Frazier, the general manager of Carlos O'Kelly's. Prosecutor asked, "How old are you?" 53. "How long have you been the manager at Carlos O'Kelly's?" At the time of the shooting, 18 years. "Other than being general manager, did you work in any other capacity?" "I am part owner." "Other than that, did anyone in your family work at Carlos O'Kelly's at one time or another?" "Yes, everybody in my family worked at Carlos O'Kelly's at one time or another. My wife Barbara did sales and marketing. She would go to businesses and try to get catering deals, drum up good business. She would also do tours of the school." "Who else?" "My son Robert. He worked back of the house as the cook and the prep and line." "Anyone else?" "My son Ryan. He started as a dishwasher and did some cooking. My daughter Sonia started as a server and became a supervisor." The prosecutor goes on to have him describe the layout of the restaurant and where it's located in the shopping center. The gist of it is it's on the corner of Croix and Kansas Avenue, across the street from Old White Lakes Mall in the southwest corner. The restaurant has a main entrance, 2 dining rooms on the north and south side, and then a kitchen in the exterior door, kind of like a capital A. Between the kitchen and the dining room, there's a door that says employees only, usually right past that, the restrooms in most restaurants. The prosecutor then asks specifically about the doors. "Is the main entrance door left open?" "It is locked until 11 o'clock, until the first customer comes in." "Same routine every day?" "Yes." "What about the fire exit doors?" "Those are locked all the time. They have a panic bar on the inside. There's no way to get in from the outside." The prosecutor then asked, "Tell me about the back door." "Okay, the back door is used mainly for deliveries and the salesmen. People who come through the back door during the day, that is our main delivery area." "Now on the outside of the back door, is there some structure?" "There's a shed area, and we kept junk, really chairs, broke down appliances, lots and lots of equipment." "Are those things left out in the open?" "No, they're inside the shed. The shed didn't have doors, but we tried to keep it clean." "Other than the shed, are there any other structures around the outside of the back door?" "At the time, we kept the trash bins inside the gates around the back area. There was a brick fenced in area that we would call the back gate that had 2 heavy doors with a padlock. I think you get the idea here. This is a pretty common back area of a restaurant. There's trash, storage, an area you would keep out of unless you had a reason to be there. Now the prosecutor is going to shift to the office of the actual restaurant. He says, "Can you tell me a little bit about what's called the office?" The office is the first door on the right. What is it used for? We kept money in the office. The office was used for it if we had any talks with employees that needed to be not publicized. We would be in that office. Most, if not all, the office paperwork was done there. And when he says off to the right, he means if you're entering from the back of the restaurant, it'd be the first door you saw when you walked in on your right, not if you entered the main entrance. Now, you'd indicated all the money was kept in the office. Where specifically? Before opening, before 11 o'clock, it's all kept in the safe, unless a vendor came in that required cash, which we didn't really deal with. Many vendors required cash except on an emergency basis. So up until 11 o'clock, basically, it was all kept in the safe. At 11, when we get ready to open, we would open the safe and do the bar drawer. $250 would go outside to the bar drawers. Where in particular in the office is the safe? The safe is a ground safe, underground, drilled into the cement, and the safe itself sits inside this hole in the cement. So it's in the floor. It is in the floor. We had probably 3 safes taken in burglaries, so I decided to make it a little harder for the burglars. Let's pause for a second. You had 3 safes stolen from your restaurant? What is going on at Carlos O'Kelly's that people feel that they can go inside and steal your safe and nothing's going to happen? I don't know about that. I'd like to talk about January 24, 2002. Do you remember when you got to the work that day between 9 and 9:30? As you went to the back door, what did you see? Not really much of anything. A couple of prep cooks in the back were cooking, and that's all I could really see, except the hallway to the restaurant. So what did you do when you got there? When I got there, probably went into the office, took off the coat, checked with Barb, who was doing a tour. We had 25 kids, and we were giving them the tour. So I checked with Barb, and who was the girl that was helping her, one of the food servers, to see if they needed anything. They didn't. Then I checked with the kitchen to see if everyone showed up so far, or if we needed any extra product for the day. What did you do then? I went back to the office. By the time you got back to the office, do you know about how long you've been in the restaurant? About 45 minutes. So if you showed up at 9, it's about 9:45. If you showed up at 9:30, it's about 10:15. As you're sitting there on the countertop working, can you see the doorway? No. What about the back door? Can you see it? No. What happened while you were working? While I was working, a voice came in and said, "Give me all your money." And I kind of shooed him away, thinking it was an employee and just being stupid. I said, "Go back to work." Did you turn around to see who it was? No, I didn't. What can you tell me about this voice? The voice I did not recognize. The voice was, at the time, I didn't really notice a lot about the voice. It was a deep voice, so I knew it was a male. What happened next? He said, "No, I'm serious. Give me all your money." Other than being able to tell if it was a low voice, could you tell anything more about the voice? I could tell it was a black man by the tone of his voice. According to John Bowe, PhD, the inventor of the term linguistic profiling, humans do associate different races with tones of voice. He studied discrimination and racism in big companies while screening for interviews and phone sales. Based on simply the tone of a caller's voice, he found companies routinely wrote off the person as unqualified or not worth pursuing based on believing that person on the other end of the line was African American. Bo has found racist responses in hundreds of calls. He tests ads with a series of 3 calls. First person speaks with an African American dialect in response to the ad. Then a researcher with a Mexican-style Spanish English dialect calls. Finally, a third caller uses what most people regard as a standard English dialect. Many times, researchers found that that person using the ethnic dialect got no return calls. If they did reach the company, frequently they were told that what was advertised was no longer available, though it was still available to the standard English speaker. Racial identification and speech captured public attention during the infamous O.J. Simpson trial as well. Simpson's African-American attorney, Mr. Johnny Cochran, objected forcibly to the assertion that one can deduce a racial identity from speech. In 1999, in the case of Clifford versus Kentucky, the Supreme Court enlisted linguistic profiling to convict an African-American man who was overheard by a white police officer. This case affirms the legality of racial identification based on speech by the lay of a witness. The judge ruled racial profiling is based on visual cues that result in confirmation or speculation, and linguistic profiling is based upon auditory cues that may induce racial identification. A linguistic profiler was never brought in to testify at the trial. To indicate you turned around, what did you see? I saw a gentleman covered in clothes, dark clothes, whose head had probably a ski mask on it, and then more wrappings around the head, possibly on the forehead area, like scarves. So let's picture this. This guy has dark clothes, a ski mask, and scarves around his ski mask. I don't know. Sounds like something out of Scooby-Doo. What was the person doing when you turned around? He was holding a gun. Describe how he was holding it. He was holding a gun in one hand, I believe. It was his left hand, and holding his wrist with the right hand. Where was he pointing the gun? At me. When you turned around, how close to you was this man? Maybe a foot and a half away? When you stood around, or when you turned around, what was your intention? To turn around, go back to the safe, and open it to get the money. So you stood and turned around, and what happened? He shot me. Did he say anything? No. How many times did he shoot? Once. Where were you hit? I was hit in the right shoulder, and the bullet went in. Hit the collarbone, shattered the collarbone, but in the meantime, deflected and went over to my spinal column and hit the T4. What did this man do when he shot you? He ran. Where did he go? Out the back door. Do you have any lingering effects from the gunshot wound? Yes, I am totally paralyzed from my chest down. I have lost my mental capacity, and that's about it. This trial also has some interesting jury drama. You could say before the trial even starts, 2 jurors are reported for having prior knowledge of the case. So this is kind of interesting. I don't know. Maybe this is what small town Topeka is like. I don't know. But before the trial starts, 2 jurors are reported for having prior knowledge of the case. The judge questions them about the matter. They admit they know the defendant was being held in jail because he was escorted by 2 police officers. The judge asked how they know he was being escorted by officers, because obviously James is not wearing a prison jumpsuit, he's wearing a suit. Jurors admitted they played softball with the 2 officers that brought him in. I'll let you make your own judgment on how impartial they can be. The judge ruled they can still be impartial and allowed them to stay on the jury. Later in the trial, we have more juror drama. Kathy, juror number 4, is brought in to the judge. The judge, he says, would you, just in your own words, relay what happened this morning? This morning while I was at work, a woman that I work with in my office confronted me. The Kansas Department of Revenue. Her husband, yesterday, he knew I was a potential juror. She confronted me and said, I heard you got picked for jury duty. I said, yes, I did. Well, you know, he's going to be found not guilty because the state doesn't have enough evidence. Did you engage in any more conversation? No, I just shrugged my shoulders and walked off. Do you think this will affect your ability to be impartial? No. Now, this doesn't seem like a big deal on its own, but you have to wonder if this guy knew she was a juror and everybody knows he's guilty, but they don't have enough evidence. Can we make a reasonable decision that maybe we should exclude juror number 4 out of caution. Maybe that will stick in her head when she's making her decision on his guilt. Would you be comfortable with a person deciding your fate who has that preconceived notion? I know this isn't a perfect system, but there are opportunities to make it better. And if we're being honest, this juror should have been dismissed. There's alternates for a reason. The next witness for the state is Al Stevens. Al Stevens is a 63-year-old man from Linden, Kansas. He has worked as a director of environmental services for Brewster Place for 27 years. His job description, according to him, is maintaining all building inside and out, including maintenance department and housekeeping department. So he's kind of like a facilities manager for this like apartment complex, I guess you could say. So the prosecutor asks his first question. So is all your work at Brewster Place over on 29th Street by Burlingame? I leave the grounds quite a bit. Meeting, picking up materials. For many, many reasons, I'm off the property. Do you work the normal house hours, 8 to 5? During the course of your employment at Brewster Place, have you come to know a man named Mike Neal? Yes, Mike Neal worked in the maintenance department as a remodeler. Are you familiar with the place in Topeka known as Carlos O'Kelly's? Yes, I've eaten there on numerous occasions and I know the owners. The prosecutor goes on to ask if he's been inside Carlos O'Kelly's beyond the dining room. Al says he has. He's been all around the restaurant, familiar with the layout, familiar with the location. Mr. Stevens, were you in the area of Carlos O'Kelly's in White Lakes Mall the morning of January 24th, 2002? Yes, I was. What type of vehicle were you using at the time? I was driving my own vehicle, a white 93 Dodge Dakota pickup truck. What was the purpose in being in the area that morning? Mike Neal needed to pick up some materials for a project, and we were going over to Southern Lumber to make the purchase. Southern Lumber at that time was located at the north end of White Lakes, correct? Correct. The prosecutor then introduced exhibit number 1, an overview aerial shot of the mall and Carlos O'Kelly's. Al verifies that it's accurate. If you want to see the image of this, you can just go to the No Stone Left Unturned Facebook group. We'll have all the materials available for you to view. On January 24, 2002, do you recall what time you started your workday? I believe I was in there somewhere between 6:30 and 7. Do you recall what time in the morning it was that you happened to be in the area of White Lakes? I'm believing at the time period was mid-morning, but to specify exactly a time, I can't tell you. But it was before lunch, and I was at work for a while before we left. Do you remember how you go to the White Lakes Mall area? Yes, I left Brewster Place, which is on the west side of Topeka Boulevard, and drove straight across to Kansas Avenue, over to Croix, and then back to Southern Lumber. Who was we? Mike Neal and myself. What happened when you reached the intersection of Kansas and Croix? When we got to the corner, there was a car in front of us. The car stopped. I turned the corner and was right behind that vehicle, and it had stopped. Did you see the vehicle make the corner on Croix? While we were traveling on Kansas, do you recall being able to, what do you recall about the vehicle, the prosecutor asked? Nothing in particular. It was a normal traffic and just another car in front of us. It was a car? Yes. Do you remember what color the car was? It was a real dark color, dark blue, dark black, something of that nature. Other than the color, anything else you recall? It had a tinted window. So as you're driving down Kansas Avenue, could you tell how many people were in the car? When the car stopped in front of me, I focused on the car, and there were 2 people in it. As the car made the corner, and as you made the corner onto Croix, were you anticipating that car to have to stop? Not at all. Is there a stop sign there? No. In relation to Carlos O'Kelly's, where did this car stop on Croix? In a direct line with what I would call the back of the building. What could you tell me about the car? It was a dark car, tinted out windows, two people in it. Where were the two people in the car? One driving, one passenger. Was the passenger in the front or the back? In the front. As you were sitting in your pickup truck and the two occupants are in the car, what could you tell me about the people in the car? They were black fellas. That's about all I could tell you. That's all he can tell you, that they were black in a tinted car. You indicated the passenger got out of the car? Yes, he did. Did anyone else get out of the car? No. What could you see about the passenger when he got out of the car? Black man wearing baggy pants, big, large, baggy coat. When he got out of the car, he pulled the hood over his head and headed to Carlos O'Kelly's. As you were driving past the car, could you tell any more about the driver? No. I looked over at the car, but with dark windows, all I could tell was that it was a black fella. I don't understand that statement. Do what you do then. What'd you do then? I went into the White Lakes and bought out our materials for the day. Where did you go after that? Back to work. Did you get past Carlos O'Kelly's the same way you came? No. At that point in time, we went back out of Topeka Boulevard and headed back to Brewster. At some point, did the police come talk to you? Yes. How many times did you speak with the police? A couple different times. The first time, did you give a statement? Yes. You didn't do anything else? No, not at that point. Did you meet Detective Eby again? Yes. Yes, I did. Did you recall when? Again, I can't recall exactly, but it was like weeks back over to Brewster's place. He showed me some pictures. How many times did he do that? Twice. So what did he want you to do with those pictures? To see if I could identify the individuals. Did you think you would be able to identify the driver of the car? No. At the time of your meeting with Detective Eby, did you think in your mind you would be able to recognize the man who got out? Yes. Did you identify anybody else from the photos? No. Did you meet again? Yes. Later in the year. 10 months later? Yes. What happened this time? I picked an individual out that I thought got out of the car. How did you indicate to Detective Eby you picked somebody out? Well, I picked somebody out and then looked at all the photos and eliminated everybody to make sure that if I do identify this person I picked, I used a process of this and then eliminated everybody else to make sure that in my mind, there wasn't someone else that might have been the individual. What did you write next to the photo you picked? As a process of elimination, I have concluded that number 2 is the person I saw. On cross-examination, James's attorney doesn't do much besides ask Mr. Stephen multiple times if he's sure that's the photo he picked, verify his initials, and he gets Mr. Stevens to admit that he never actually wrote as a process of elimination, I have included number 2 was the person I saw below the photo. That was actually Mr. Eby's handwriting. That's right, the detective wrote under the photo that this is the photo that Al picked. Other than that, cross-examination was pretty pointless. So that's the first leg of the state's case. A 63-year-old man driving to a lumber shop in the morning. He stops short behind a car with tinted windows, immediately identifies the driver and passengers as blackfellas. 9 months later, by process of elimination, picks photo number 2, and James Griffin, not even the guy in photo number 2, is arraigned and charged. Next week, we will hear from the passenger in Al's car that day. And let's just say he remembers things a little differently. I'm sure you have thoughts, questions about the case. Please submit all questions, thoughts, and theories to the Facebook group No Stone Left Unturned podcast. Thank you for listening.